The Center for Deafblind Persons is located in Milwaukee area, West Dallas now. West Dallas now. Is your mic on? All right. All right. I'll let her explain what the position she holds is. I know it has to do with I Can Connect and other good stuff with assistive technology. But yeah, here's Dani. So here's where I vamp. All right, who came for the furthest for this training? Superior? No, no. Stevens Point? Stevens Point? Anybody farther than Stevens Point? Vroke was pretty far. I know that. We had some two and a half hours. I'm only 72 miles away, and it took me an hour and a half to get here, so it was awful. We got the hardest working man in technology here. I will take this moment to say thank you to my colleague, Lisa Sobchak, that works with me. She's over there working studiously right now. She never stops. She's going to stop next week, though. She's going to Jamaica, and we're all jealous. I'd also like to throw a shout out to Tony Shea from SVRI, Stout Vocational Rehabilitation Institute, helping to organize and get the logistics in order. And thank you all again for being here. We're going to try to wrap it up. I know we're a little behind schedule, but we're going to figure this out, and here we go.
Okay, I think I'm on. All right. First, just thank you for being here. I know this is a long day on one single specific area that most of you don't work in every single day. I think most of you are generalists where you're wearing 25 different hats in one day, and so this is a lot on something very specific, and I'm about to get even more specific. But I thank you for your patience. The first presenters were wonderful and set me up very nicely. As Mason said, I work for the Center for Deafblind Persons. We are the only agency in Wisconsin that specializes in people with both hearing and vision loss. That is a combined loss, so in the same person. There are a few other agencies in the country, but definitely not every state or every region even has one. My title is Specialist in Deafblindness, but that's pretty much the title that everybody that works at our center has, except our executive director. The other main hat that I wear is as the primary assessor and trainer for the adults in the I Can Connect program, which is a technology program that I'm going to get into in a moment. Sorry, that was loud. Before I start, I have my whole PowerPoint presentation of what I think you need to know, but I want to know what you want to know. My main topics are the center itself and what we do, who we serve, what services we can provide to the people that we serve, and then the I Can Connect program specifically, which is an equipment distribution program for people who are deafblind. So just raise your hand, give me a topic that you're interested in or a specific area that you might want to know more about, and I'll make sure to spend a little more time on that. Andrew?
Communication devices.
Okay. Communication devices is what Andrew said. Anybody else?
Everybody's tired.
Yeah, he said everybody's tired. Yes, everybody is tired. Okay. Well, if you don't volunteer a topic, then you're going to hear more about what I think is important. So feel free to raise your hand later if you think of something. All right. Before we get started, I want to talk about what it means to be deafblind. And What is the first thing that you think of when you hear deafblind? Helen Keller, right. That's who everybody thinks of. And she's actually pretty rare in a lot of ways. One was that she had no usable vision or hearing, and another was the resources she had as far as a one-on-one educator and assistant and companion and all of those things throughout her life. That's not a realistic situation these days. And her intelligence. There's no question that she definitely had innate intelligence to go with all of the services she was receiving that were even very unusual. But let's look at some other scenarios. I think I have 7 different descriptions of people, and I want to know, just based on their description, and of course you would need more information, but if this was the only information that you got before an assessment or before somebody was coming in to see you, would you think probably deafblind or probably not? So we'll go through all of them. The first one says, I could see and hear all my life, but now that I'm getting old, I can't do either one too well. Or, I've been legally blind since childhood, and now I'm losing my hearing. The third says, I am deaf, but I can see pretty well. The fourth one, I wear hearing aids, and I can still see to drive, but I've been diagnosed with a disease that will make my vision and hearing get worse. The next one, I have no usable hearing or vision. Next, I am hard of hearing, and I can't even recognize my wife without my glasses. And the last one, I can hear, but I can't always understand conversation. I can see, but I can't make out details. So out of 7, I'm going to have you raise your hand. How many of you think that one of those descriptions is of somebody who's probably deafblind? Do say 1. How many say 2? 2 people. Got 2 back there. How many say 3? 3 descriptions? Nobody? 4? How about 5? 5 of those people are probably deafblind. You look like you're thinking about maybe 6? All of them? Got a few people saying all of them. Yeah, and under certain circumstances, any of them could be. I want to just go through them again. The first person, I could see and hear all my life, but now that I'm getting old, I can't do either one too well. We have a lot of people that are older adults that would never in a million years classify themselves as deafblind, and probably the name of our agency is a little off-putting for them. But the fact of the matter is that they do qualify for certain services that you need to have that label of deafblind to qualify for. And when you put it that way, when we say, well, we just kind of mean that combination of vision and hearing loss that makes it harder than one alone. I've been legally blind since childhood, and now I'm losing my hearing. We see that one a lot at our agency. We've got a lot of people that are young adults, middle age, who were born blind, but they were hearing, and they learned all these compensatory strategies and ways to do things, and now their hearing isn't reliable for a variety of reasons, and they've got to learn these new strategies. So that can be quite difficult. This third one was kind of a trick question. I am deaf, but I can see pretty well. That is a quote from one of our consumers who comes regularly to our agency, and he was there at a social event with his guide dog for the blind under the table with him. But he has retinitis pigmentosa, RP, which causes basically tunnel vision. So he can see pretty well. Yeah, I can see your whole face. I can't see that there's anybody else in the room, but I can see your whole face. So we have to be careful about how people identify themselves because it's not always how we see them. I wear hearing aids and I can still see to drive, but I've been diagnosed with a disease that will make my vision and hearing get worse. This is, I think, one of our most under-referred groups, is people that have some sort of progressive vision and or hearing loss on top of whatever other vision and hearing loss they have. They might be doing very well now, might still be legal to drive, but they're going to need services to deal with some of the things that are going to go along with this progressive loss. I have no usable hearing or vision. This is our smallest group. We have some people like that, but it is our smallest group. I'm hard of hearing and I can't even recognize my wife without my glasses. This one raises the biggest question for me because I'm not sure that I would recognize important people in my life without my contacts in. And if somebody has poor vision but it's correctable with glasses or contacts, we don't count that as the secondary loss. So that's the one to me that would be the biggest question mark. I'd ask the most questions initially. And the last one, I can hear but I can't always understand conversation. I can see but I can't make out details, and we have a lot of folks like that too. Okay, so who is deafblind? We've been trying to figure out a good way to explain this one for years. You've got, welcome to low tech, folks. We started to think about like the autism spectrum. We were like, well, maybe it's a spectrum, deaf blindness. But then we realized we have two axes. We've got two arrows. We've got from hard of hearing to deaf, and of course there's people over here with normal hearing to some of those intermittent losses that you wouldn't call hard of hearing yet, but maybe there's some issues. Those are over there. We don't serve that population, but we do serve this population, from hard of hearing to big D deaf to profoundly deaf, however you want to say it. And then we've got the second axis of low vision. Some people prefer the term partially sighted, partial vision, any of those. We're basically talking about a clinical vision loss that cannot be corrected by glasses, and then up through blind. So we've got quadrants, and that helps explain it, but we've got more than that going on. We've got from born deafblind to acquired one loss at some point in life to acquired both losses later. We've got stable vision or hearing to progressive loss, and on and on and on. So there's a lot of differences. The center itself was founded in 1985. We've been in 3 buildings now, but always in the Milwaukee area. And it was founded by someone with combined vision and hearing loss. She had lost her vision gradually, and then later, as an adult with a child, found herself losing her hearing. And when she went to the agencies for the deaf and hard of hearing for help, she realized they just didn't really get her. They didn't understand how her vision loss impacted her hearing loss. She said they were very nice, but they didn't know what to do with me. And so she created our agency. And she wrote this, and I understand you guys did not get the handout, and I apologize for that. I had a little technical difficulty, and then I had my boss send it for me, and Mason was looking for something from me, so I messed up. But anyway, this is in the handout, and you will get the handout emailed to you. But this talks about a unique disability. Deaf blindness is not just deafness plus blindness. It's not 2 disabilities put together. It's one unique disability. And as the author, who is our agency's founder and Executive Director Emeritus, wrote, "Let me try to explain. I am totally blind, having lost my vision gradually starting in childhood. In young adulthood, I started losing my hearing. With hearing aids, I'm able to understand some speech in a quiet environment. When I was only blind, I could socialize with many people at a gathering. Now, at best, I can converse with the individual next to me. When I was only blind, I could interact with people in a room where the radio was playing, dishes were clattering, and laughter abounded. Now, with background noise, I can understand nothing and be alone in a crowd. When I was only blind, I could sense sadness, joy, anger, and agitation by a person's tone of voice. That is no longer possible, and the loss sometimes causes misunderstandings. When I was only blind, I could hear the softest footsteps. Today, I'm repeatedly startled by the voice of a person who's entered the room with no forewarning. When I was only blind, I could identify a person by his or her voice. Now, I cannot tell who is talking to me unless I first hear a name. When I was only blind, I could move quickly with my white cane and in familiar surroundings without it. Now, I walk cautiously to avoid bumping people, since I cannot hear if others are around or where they might be. When I was only blind, I could retrieve a dropped item in seconds by hearing where it fell. No longer able to localize sound, I must search on my hands and knees, and even then I might not locate the item because it rolled behind a door or into another room. When I was only blind, I could stand unsupported in the middle of a room, bend over, turn sharply, jump out of bed quickly. This is no longer the case. Like many others with hearing loss, I have balance problems which prohibit abrupt movements. When I was only blind, I had no difficulty hearing the ring of the telephone or the doorbell. Today, even with amplified ringers, my responses are inconsistent, and I must consider using a vibrating alert system. When I was only blind, talking on the telephone was fun. Now, even with hearing aids combined with a volume control phone, some words are missed and misunderstandings occur. Sometimes I use a Braille-type telephone, which is slower and does not convey the emotional nuances of the voice. When I was only blind, I spent hours listening to talking books. Most voices now sound muffled. When I was only blind, my husband and I enjoyed movies. He provided an occasional description. Movies are confusing and no longer pleasurable. When I was only blind, life had minimal stress. Now, piecing together bits of information, localizing difficulties, balance problems, misunderstandings, attitudes of others, and unpredictable drops in hearing increase my daily stress and fatigue. The list of challenges is equally long for individuals who are deaf and have lost or are losing vision. Deaf people rely on their vision to compensate for their hearing loss. Blind people use their hearing to compensate for their sight loss. Deaf-blind people are only able to compensate for the loss of both sight and hearing by learning deaf-blind specific adaptations that focus on developing and integrating touch, taste, smell, kinesthesia, and any remaining vision or hearing. When I acknowledge the need and learn new ways of doing old things, my splintered pieces combined into a complete, though narrowed whole. I rejoiced once again in being able, differently able. Ruth Silver. I know that was long, but she really captured what our consumers experience every day. And it's not just one of those things, it's all of those things combined. I do have for you, if you want one, I have brochures that Mason Vanna will show you there with the same thing that explain what services we have. The left column, it says rehabilitation training, and that is primarily classes within our center in Milwaukee. We provide communication classes. For some people, that might be sign language classes. For some people, that might be working on a communication book to work with, like we've got a couple of people that are living in group homes or other kinds of residential facilities, and the staff turnover is so great that even if we provided sign language classes, we probably wouldn't see much happening, but with the communication books, they're able to at least get their primary needs conveyed pretty quickly. So that kind of thing. Independent living, that can be anything from how to clean when you can't really see what you're doing, cooking safely without vision or with reduced vision, money management, any kind of at-home independent living skills. Even for our consumers, like I said, that may be in group homes, you want them to be as independent as possible. So we teach maybe keeping the room clean and keeping on top of paperwork and things like that. Leisure activities and tactile sensory development, those are really important for our clients. They have a lot of time in the day that is unstructured typically and with very little to do. They're not going to watch TV. A lot of them don't know how to do anything on like a smartphone. So they're not doing some of the same kinds of things. They're not going out doing sports in a lot of cases. So they need to find, first of all, that they can do some of those things. They just need to learn a different way to do it than what they would expect. Or if those areas aren't of interest to them, then what else can we look at for you to do? And so we have classes in that. We have a support group that meets once a week, and it is a combination of what we sometimes call blind deaf and deaf blind. Some of the people were blind first and are non-signers. Some of the people were deaf first and sign. And we have a professional interpreter there for every support group. And they talk about their problems in a private environment. There's a support group facilitator that's one of our staff members, but nothing leaves the room. It's all confidential. A support service provider program, that is to facilitate community involvement. So somebody might say, I want to go to Walmart, and then we'll schedule 2 hours to go to Walmart, and I might read the prices for somebody, or let them know what color something is, or just, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's
Do
okay.
you offer orientation and mobility training as well now?
Yes. The question was if we offer orientation and mobility training, and yeah, that's on the back of this. So it's the next page, but yes, we do offer that. But sometimes with the support service provider is not as much about the mobility of getting around to a place or getting around in a place. It's about the access to information. You know, well, you came here and you said you wanted a blue short sleeve shirt. I don't see any, but here's what else they have that is either a blue shirt or a short sleeve shirt. Maybe they'll cut you off and say, oh, I don't want anything long sleeve. Okay, fine, here's what the choices are for long sleeve, or short sleeve, you know, and then you go through. So we typically, in a support service provider situation, we're providing visual information, and not just about the specific things they're interested in, but just about what's going on in the store in general. There's more people here than average just in this section with the clothes. There's 6 people looking at clothing, and you know, and then they may ask questions from there. But they don't even a lot of times know what information to ask for because it's not been provided to them on a regular basis, so they don't know what they're missing sometimes. Somebody who's recently lost their vision may know those things, but somebody who grew up with the vision and hearing loss may not. So we provide visual information, we provide auditory information. There's a woman that I regularly go to Subway with, and she can hear all right, doesn't sign, but I have to be on her right side and speaking slowly as well as fairly loudly for her to hear. And we're at Subway, she's even shorter than I am, believe it or not, and the glass, she can't hear the person through the glass. So my way of providing the auditory information is to repeat it, you know. She said, did you want wheat or honey oat, or whatever it is. So, and then communication facilitation. Sometimes there isn't a common language, so we don't provide interpreting services anytime it gets into a situation where we know they would need an actual interpreter. Then we'll halt it and pause and do it again later. But if you're out at Walmart and some lady says to my consumer, "Oh, I like your dress," I am definitely going to sign to her, "Woman over there, she said she likes your dress." So that kind of thing. Pre-vocational and vocational services, all the typical DVR kinds of things, but with your vendor being somebody who signs and who understands deafblindness. Public education and technical assistance. We do presentations like this one. This will probably fall into this category on my timesheet when I get back on Monday. And older adult services. That's one area, again, where people don't always think of deafblindness. They just think it's an old lady with old lady problems. You're laughing, but it's true. Or maybe you're laughing because it's true. Then we have a social group once a month. It's called WISH, which started out as with impaired sight and hearing, but really they just go by WISH now. Either we go out in the community or we have some kind of an activity with food and whatever at our agency. Since this summer, we've gone to State Fair. We've had a picnic at City Park. Can't remember what they did. Oh, they saw a movie last month. It was closed captioned and descriptive audio, and then we still had interpreters so that everybody could benefit. And then the last thing on here. Oh, I guess they don't list O&M, do they? That's bad. Is it? Okay. Oh, maybe I cut it off.
Oh, it's on the first page on the rehabilitation.
Oh, okay. It was under rehabilitation training. Yes. So we have orientation and mobility, and that's an important one to have with somebody that's familiar with how that hearing loss is also impacting what they're going to suggest to do with vision loss. A lot of the strategies that are typically used by orientation and mobility specialists do involve audio. And not to say that somebody who's never worked with somebody who has a hearing loss also couldn't figure out some things, but I think they'd be, it would be more difficult to come up with them. These are the things that our O&M specialist does, are things that he's been doing for a long time. But then the last thing is the I Can Connect program, and I'll get into that in a little bit. We do assessments also at the center. We do a comprehensive assessment that includes all of these areas: independent living, the hearing and vision. We get the reports, but we also want to look at how they're functioning and what their perception is of their hearing and vision loss. And sometimes it doesn't match the medical reports, and usually the medical reports, if they're recent, are a little bit more accurate. So then we can work on some education too. We also do look at if they've been using any assistive technology or not, how they are communicating, both face-to-face and long distance. Their knowledge of resources. This would be where we would, if needed, send them to you, send them to other agencies for specific aspects of what they might need. Child care. Yeah, we do have some deafblind people that have children, and they tend to be a little bit nervous about having us talk to them about child care because of the fear of having their children taken away because of their diagnosis. But we have not experienced that. We've never had anybody that wasn't good at being a parent, but after working with us, they had some strategies to maybe convince anybody else that asked that they were able to safely be a parent to those kids, and of course also make their kids' lives a little safer. Leisure, we talked about. Coping, talked about. The community support needs, would they benefit from a support service provider? And orientation transportation and mobility. We do technology assessments, and I wrote work, school, and I Can Connect, but I've been working with adults for so long that when I write school, I'm thinking college. The WDB TAP takes good care of the kids that are in K through 21 or before that even. But if we have somebody that is deafblind who calls and says, I know that I need stuff for school, but I don't know what I need. Can you help me? We'll do that. If we get a call from a school that says we've got this deafblind person and we know that they need some help, what do we do? And then the I Can Connect program. This seems like I'm switching gears, but I'm not really. Indirect information. What's something that you learned or you figured out recently without anybody telling you? Just that something you overheard, something you saw on the way here. Most of you had long drives. Any little piece of knowledge that you picked up. I put examples. Our agency's building was torn down. I knew it was going to happen, but drove by there one day recently and it was gone. And there was a big pile of rubble in its place. I knew that somebody in my daughter's apartment building got a new dog because I could hear it barking. And I asked her, did anybody get a new dog? And my daughter, who is deaf, said, no, nobody got a new dog. And I thought, okay, whatever. Thought it was her dog, maybe, but it sounded like further away. And then the next day she called me. She's like, Mom, how'd you know there was a new dog? It's way down the hall. Can you hear that far? And I said, yeah, I could hear the dog that far. Wow, you have great hearing. So some of those kinds of things. Just what's something that you learned or... That's a great one. She saw a sign for a new restaurant downtown. So, maybe she puts it in the back of her head, and the next time somebody says, I'm sick of going to the same old places, let's go someplace new, she's like, oh, I saw a sign. And the individual who's deafblind misses out on that. What's another one?
There's just so many.
Exactly. It's like everything.
Things you take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I have a coworker who's blind, and I just think about even just watching TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know if you heard all of what she said. She said she has a coworker who's blind, and she knows there are just so many things that you miss out on. She said even just watching TV. And right, because you're watching TV sometimes, and somebody says something, and they're all totally serious, especially like a soap opera, and then they turn, and they have this other look that says they were lying the whole time or whatever. There's visual things, or they zoom in on the paper that shows that that's not true at all.
Then you hear dun dun dun.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. What were you going to say, Mason?
I was just going to say, my vision is not great. I wear glasses, but without glasses, I'm useless. And with
Mhm.
glasses, I'm about useless.
Uh-huh.
So I was mowing my lawn one time last year, and I unwittingly ran over a hole with hornets in it.
Oh.
And so now I know to look for it, but even still, you have to look really closely and know where they are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a struggle.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Did everybody hear what he said?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's fortunate is a lot of TV and movies now have what's called a second audio program, or SAP, which is hugely helpful if you can hear it on video, and that's the
Exactly. Talking about the second audio programming where you get that descriptive audio, which is great if you can hear it. So all of these things that are designed for deaf people or designed for blind people kind of don't work as well when you've got a deaf-blind person. But going specifically to the indirect information, I read a statistic once, and I wish I had saved the source because I couldn't find it, and I looked for it for hours, but about how much of the information that we acquire is secondhand. It's you walk by a TV set and see something. You're not even sitting down to watching the TV, but you're, I don't know, at a bar or something, and there's on the TV, and you see that the Brewers won, or you see that that somebody's in trouble politically, or whatever. All those things, but then down to the other things like the expression on somebody's face when you do something. I'm getting a lot of feedback from you, but if I were, well, our executive director who wrote the unique disability, she did a lot of presentations, and we worked on a lot of different ways to give her feedback without being like, oh, that lady's checking her phone or whatever. And they've actually come up with a great method for that now, but that's another presentation for another day. The point is that people are missing out on all kinds of information, and so you're almost adding another layer of disability to the disability, because they don't have, it's not just what did they miss in school because they couldn't hear well or see well. It's what did they miss in life? What did they miss in the playground? What soft skills did they not pick up? And there are some barriers to communication for people who are deafblind, even among people who care very dearly about them. A lot of times, there's no shared language or communication method. It was mentioned earlier by one of the presenters that 90% of people who are deaf are born to hearing parents, but they didn't mention that 90% of those never learn sign language. Yeah. I will tell you that I am a rock star among my children's friends because I can sign to some degree. And still to this day, they're in their late 20s and their 30s. And if I run into them at a professional event or just in town or wherever, I get a very, very nice greeting. And it's nice, but it's really sad because I know they couldn't communicate with so many other parents, including maybe their own. Without all of that acquired information, a lot of times people don't have shared background knowledge, things to talk about. They don't do the same activities. The deafblind person isn't hearing the news. If you think of an older couple you know, because I know you all know one, where there's at least one person that's hard of hearing and the other one can hear fairly well still, they're running out of things to talk about. You're nodding over there. Am I correct?
They're still in the you mumble stage.
Oh, still in the you mumble stage, yeah. Yeah, if I had a nickel for every time, yeah. The communication can be difficult for the person who's not deafblind. They might not know what to say. A lot of times they don't provide that incidental information. Sometimes they edit information. It's too much work to try to, repeat it 14 times and this and that, so they kind of boil it down. And I am not passing judgment on this because I have done these things myself with my children. Sometimes it just at the beginning, especially as I was a new signer, it got to be like, oh, if only I could figure out how to tell her that this, and this, but we're just going to keep going with what we're doing, They might think it's not important, it's not life-changing information, so you don't need it. Yes?
I just want to say that as a deaf individual, without the additional barrier of being deaf and blind, I still miss out on a lot of gossip, and just imagine what they miss out on as well.
Exactly. You are right. You are exactly right. It's, the things that people think, oh, well, that's not important. I don't, it doesn't affect his life if I tell him that this person left work 10 minutes early and wasn't supposed to, or whatever it is, But that's sort of key to being a person, is to having the same information everybody else does. Sometimes people try to protect the deafblind individual. Maybe they're going to a doctor's appointment and the doctor is very forthright and says, you need to lower your blood pressure or you're at a higher risk of heart attack and stroke. And the message the deafblind person gets is, doctor says you need to take pills. Well, that's not fair, but it happens. Sometimes the problem is no assistive technology, no way to talk to anybody. Sometimes it's improper or outdated technology, and not necessarily outdated in the way of the giant TTY, but outdated in, this worked for me when I could see this well, but it doesn't work for me anymore now that I lost this much more vision, or, yeah. Sometimes people don't have any AT skills, so no one wants to invest in equipment for them, and it becomes an endless loop. Well, you don't know how to use it, so we're not going to get it for you. So I Can Connect, and that's the common name. You'll really never hear National Deafblind Equipment Distribution Program unless you read the contracts or the website, and then people laughing do that. But otherwise, it's I Can Connect, or ICC. And it's helping bridge the communication technology gap for people who are deafblind. It is free equipment and training, which is key. It's a national program, but each state, well, it's run locally. There's people that are on the ground in every state doing things. And in Wisconsin, our agency is the one that does most of the assessments of the adults. WDB TAP does most of the assessments of the children. But there's been some other people too. I wanted to make you aware there's 2 programs for people who are deafblind for communication equipment. You're all familiar with TEP? Yes? No? Yes? Okay. So I've got a little comparison of I Can Connect versus TEP. I Can Connect is federal program managed locally. And TEP, of course, is a Wisconsin program, but the administrator is elsewhere. But for I Can Connect, they have to be deafblind. And there's a long, convoluted legal definition of deafblind that's available on their website, which is just icanconnect.org. But the gist of it is that they have to have a combined vision loss and hearing loss that's not correctable to a typical vision or hearing, that that makes them function less highly than they would have with only one or the other of the disabilities. And on the new form for this year, the application form, they're asking for somebody to write just a little blurb about why the individual qualifies. And if you have anybody that you want to recommend for the program, it would be super helpful if you would be the person to fill that out. And what we're looking for is things like, John used to use his cell phone for email, but now he can't see well enough or hear well enough to be really accurate with what he's doing. So some functional thing where you're talking about both the hearing and the vision and how that comes together. Like, this person can't rely only on making it bigger, and he can't rely only on listening by using some of the, like, voiceover or whatever. But if you don't have a technical thing, it doesn't matter. It could be some skill that you've noticed in their home, or that they've talked about in the community, or whatever it is. Just that would make it go quicker. I Can Connect does have an income limit. It's fairly generous. The household income must be 400% of poverty level or lower. So last I looked, if it was one person in the household, like if they were in an apartment or something, it was like $47,000, I think. So it's a fairly high bar. Consumers may participate in both programs. That's really important, and that was not true initially. And we'll talk about some situations where you might want to have them do that. One of them is just, like, TEP is time and money based. Every 3 years is how often you can get it, period, no matter what. With ICANN Connect, you can get new equipment if your needs change. So if your vision gets worse, if your vision gets better, let's say that you've got 2 eye diseases and you have cataract surgery, and now you can see a little bit more clearly and you could make use of something visual but you couldn't before, that would be cause for a reassessment. The ICANN Connect does have an assessment of needs and skills that's done by an ICANN Connect trainer. And then we choose the equipment, but in consultation with the consumer based on the assessment. And a lot of times they'll come in wanting one thing, but then when you sit down and really discuss it, just like any other AT assessment, usually you can come to a consensus on what it needs to be. There's no specific equipment list, so there's no like, yes, this is approved, no, this isn't approved. But it has to be used for distance communication, not for, I can't communicate with her, she's sitting right here, I don't know how to communicate, I need a device. No. It's got to be for email, text message, phone calls, anything basically where you're not in the same room, household, whatever, Skype, those kinds of things. Basic training is provided in the consumer's home. It can be at the training center. Generally, that's the consumer's choice, but if it would be cost prohibitive, then no.
If somebody's utilized TEP within, let's say, a year or two,
Yes.
can they still utilize ICC or is
Yes, ICC has nothing to do with TEP. It used to be that that they couldn't, but then there was a lot of discussion, and then when the program, we were in 5 years of pilot years, and somewhere along the line, maybe a couple years in, they said, no, you know what, it doesn't matter. They can use TEP for things they might want that their assessor doesn't think they need, or they can, use TEP for duplication of items. Yeah, exactly. Like Laura was talking about having a Bluetooth loop and T-coil loop. And I was thinking to myself, well, that would never fly in ICANN Connect because it would be a duplication of services. But we could get one from TEP and we could get one from ICANN Connect. And then they could have that backup, that secondary way of doing it. Good question. Let's see. So we do the assessment in the home virtually always. I've done over 100 of these, and only 2 of them we haven't done in the home. And it gives you indirect information. You pick up a few things about the family dynamics, about is there really going to be room for a laptop computer and a 48-inch monitor and, or whatever. We get the basics, their past experience. We always ask them what their experience is, and then, if possible, watch them do some of those things to make sure they match. How does a consumer communicate now? What equipment does a consumer have now? And the $64,000 question, and I think this probably is true for any AT assessment, what do you want to do with equipment from the program? And most of the time they'll come up and they'll say, well, I want an iPad. Okay, great, we can talk about that, but right now I want to know, what do you want to do with your equipment? So get them to answer that. Sometimes they don't know. They don't know what's possible. Yeah?
Do you have a wait list for your assessments?
We don't have a wait list for our assessments, no. I'm booked right now until, I'm like doing appointments in the second week of October, so it's really going pretty quickly. The thing is, we need documentation. We need documentation of their vision loss, of their hearing loss, and of their income. And those are the things that tend to take a longer bit of time. Some of the self-referrals that we got that maybe learned about us from friends or whatever, if they don't have anybody to help them, we'll go and, like, the next assessment I'm doing, I think, is a combination application and assessment. From everything I'm getting from him, I do believe he qualifies, so I'll go to his home, and he's supposed to have the documentation there, and then we'll go through and do the thing, and then we'll even do the assessment, even if he doesn't have it, because he had a video phone that he was signing to me on, so I'm pretty sure he qualifies for the hearing loss portion. And just how he interacted, I could see that I knew exactly what his vision loss was without him even telling me, or I'm pretty sure. But then we'll go right into the assessment, but then we won't actually request equipment until we get those pieces of paper, because a lot of times it's depending on how far away they are, it's cost effective to add the assessment on rather than do another driving trip. All right, just real quick, which calculator is better? We've got one that's a basic one and a scientific one.
Depends on the need.
Depends on the need, yep. And it depends on one more thing. What is it? Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's easy to fall into the trap. Oh, this one does more stuff. But if you can't find those buttons, and you don't need those things, yep. All right, Laura covered this pretty darn well, so I'm going to skip right through the telephone calls. But we do still do landline, whatever the person is in need of and in want of that makes sense. Cell phones, the dumb phones, we still do those too. There are some people that, due to their budget, due to a lot of different reasons, want one.
CapTel or the captioning phone supply the Braille display
No,
things?
no,
I
you
thought
have
it
to
did.
purchase, yep, the consumer has to purchase the Braille display.
But it works with those phones?
But it works with those phones, yeah. Yeah. Mhm. We'll get to that in a second. And maybe I skipped the part where it says it, I'm not sure. The caption phones themselves, there's, depending on which company you go through, there's no charge for them. And normally it's not something that we do through ICC, but if I am assessing somebody's needs and they really need a caption phone, I can get them a caption phone and then set it up for them. The same thing with a video phone. Those are provided by the VRS companies, but if you don't have a video phone and you need a video phone, how are you going to call and request a video phone? So I'll help with that during the whole process of getting the rest of the equipment. Just the network thing, it still matters. We've got some people, especially with the standard cell phones, there are some that have nice, great big buttons that are easy to feel and to find, but they tend to all be GSM phones, and I'm not sure why that is. So then you think, well, okay, we'll just switch networks then. If the consumer's on AT&T, they can go to US Cellular or something. But Angie, you can tell me I'm right on this, right? In like north central Wisconsin, your choices are Cellcom and Cellcom?
Yeah. The other ones don't work like the others are great.
Yeah, and even then, sometimes it's like, okay, in the house, out of the house, okay, yeah. So that's unfortunate, and I don't know why that is, that the good phones for blind or visually impaired are all on GSM, but that's how it is. The standard phone's good option for the consumer if they don't want a lot of features. If they just want to make a phone call, I don't need to email anyone, I just want to make a phone call. And we work with those people too. Sometimes they convert later on and want to do something more, and sometimes we go through 2 phones with them because they've had the first one for a long time and must have got knocked down or something, who knows. Not ready to learn additional features, small budget. Maybe they want a slow transition to a smartphone, and we're willing to do that too. We can get them a standard phone for a year, and then when they're, comfortable, then we can switch them over. The one thing I say here is use caution if the consumer's only reason that they don't want a smartphone is they don't think they can learn one. Give them a chance. Give them a chance for themselves to give them a chance.
What about, run across people, they'll suggest
And that's,
Do you have any insight into that?
I really don't, except that a few of the, I know Sprint and Virgin Mobile have just come out with your first year is basically free. And supposedly it's an unlimited plan, and I've got a SIM card in a box in my living room that I haven't activated yet, but I'm going to because I want to really see what that's about. But there again, it wouldn't help that area of the state because, right? No, that's the right area, but it's still not Cellcom, so I don't know. But I don't really have anything for you on that. And that is going to be the consumer's decision is if they think they can afford it. I always tell them to explore. Let's find out how much would it be a month. What are the providers in the area? If they live in an apartment building, we can ask some of the people in their building what providers they use, but then we call the provider directly to find out how much would this cost them. And then if it's somebody that's pretty mobile and could get to a library or a McDonald's or whatever, as long as I feel like that's a legitimate option that they would use, I would be okay with recommending that for somebody. I had somebody who went to McDonald's for a long time before they got their own cell service. If it's somebody I think that's just yes-yesing me and isn't really going to do it, then there's no purpose. Okay. The Android smartphones technically will do anything vision and hearing-wise that the iPhones will do. The big problem is what they call fragmentation, and that's there's so many versions of the iPhone out there, so many brands of iPhones out there. I mean, iPhones, Android phones out there, that it's not consistent from one thing to another. And the way that their operating system is set up is it's designed to be open and flexible. And as a consumer myself, I loved all these things because I could make all these modifications to how my screen looked and all of that. But it's hard to provide consistency and know that everything is going to work from one app to another that way. So more often than not, we recommend iPhone, but technically Android will do all of the same things, and I do still recommend Androids in certain situations.
Danny?
Yeah.
There are programs that you can apply for to get assistance with funding internet service.
Oh. If,
Lifeline will do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on who provides your internet service and what area you're in. There's
So
an
that's-
application process, just like Lifeline would be.
okay. So.
Is that rural areas only, or?
No, that's all through the state. You can talk to the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin about that. That is run as a similar program to the Second Line Capital that I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Yeah, so that would
I
reach out
did
to,
not know that.
Yeah.
I got a bone to
Definitely
pick
an income
with.
eligible
Uh-huh.
for people, specifically for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought it was based
Oh,
on.
it might not be income eligible, but it,
No, it's income eligible. I don't think it's based on disability. I'm not sure. I would yield to you.
okay, you could be right.
It's on the Public Service Commission website though.
Yeah, you.
All right,
you
I'm
might
gonna
be
look into
right.
that.
It might be just income.
They're one of our partners, and I can't connect, so I wish they had told me about that. All right, I have very little time. I want to just show you, because I'm guessing a lot of you are not familiar with some of these products. This is a Braille note taker, and I'll have in the packet that you'll get, I'll have some differences between Braille note takers and Braille displays. But basically, a Braille note taker is an all-in-one device. So you can use this without a phone or without an iPad and just walk around and send emails and go on the internet and many of the same things. It's designed for people who are blind, and Braille readers, because you're going to have to read the Braille. Some of them have screens, some don't. The keys are for typing letters, numbers, punctuation marks, but also for navigating, for getting back and forth between the different programs and whatnot. And this is a Braille display. And you're thinking, yeah, looks pretty much the same. One's thicker than the other, but mostly the same. This one it does nothing without being connected via Bluetooth or USB to an iPad or a computer or an iPhone. So all it's responsible for is sort of repeating what's on the phone in Braille, and then you can navigate around. And I'll show you that with this larger one. Yeah.
So how is the note taker connected to?
That would be the same way. It would either be a USB cord or it would be Bluetooth. You have your choice.
No, the white one?
Yeah.
The white one's like a computer by itself.
But you can use it for a
So
Braille
it's
display.
connected to the internet then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right. You're both right. It connects. You can connect it to an iPad or a phone and use it as a Braille display. But then you can also leave the big, heavy iPad at home and go walking around and just do your thing.
So it's sort of like a smartphone in a way?
Kind of, except here's the rub that we've discovered with the note takers. You know, it's a low incidence population that uses them, because first you've got people that are blind, probably with no usable vision, because otherwise they might want a screen, maybe not, and they're Braille readers. And there's a lot of fully blind people that aren't Braille readers anymore, as you know. So they don't make a whole lot of them. I recently had to return a different brand of note taker to the company for a consumer, and her serial number was 65. Had a lot of zeros in front of it, but it was 65. So anyway, low incidence. The problem is that by the time these come out, because they have small teams, you know, working on these, and by the time they come out, whatever operating system they use to make it work is outdated.
Yeah.
And so they become obsolete far faster than they should. And these are, yeah, $2,000 or $3,000 items, whereas for hundreds of dollars, you can get a similar Braille display, and then you leave all of the non-blind specific stuff to the mainstream tech folks, where everybody's buying it, and even though it seems high priced, it's still way cheaper than replacing this. And you just replace the mainstream technology, and then, because this Braille display is probably 5 or 6 years old, and no problems. But this doesn't really work anymore on the internet. It'll still do all its self-contained stuff, but it doesn't really work on the internet anymore. Oh, sorry. Andrew was stretching. I thought he had a question. So I'll just turn this back on. It went to sleep. You can see the little orange dots on here, and that's they're just bump dots. That's what worked for one consumer to know where to put her fingers.
Unlock button. Unlock. Settings. Double tap to open.
Oh, why isn't it working? This isn't the one I usually use. This is the one my coworker uses, and I think she said there was a problem with it. I thought it was frozen, but it's not acting like it's frozen. It's just not.
Settings.
It keeps showing that it's connected, and it was working just before it fell asleep.
Accessibility. Settings. Heading.
Well, first of all, I'm going to show you with
Settings. Heading.
This is just built into an iPad. You can make it work without even being able to see what it's doing. Let's say I want to go into VoiceOver.
VoiceOver. On. Button. Vision. Heading. Cap V. Accessibility. General. Accessibility. Accessibility. Heading. General. Back
Thank you.
button. Vision Sim.
It's-
Button. Flicker. Button.
I don't know what you're doing. Yeah, I think you're right. So,
Vimeo. VoiceOver. On. Settings. Heading.
yeah. I'll turn it up.
Settings. Airplane mode. On. Double tap to toggle setting.
I just turned it up. The easy way to do it, yeah. Let's see.
Speech. Braille. Settings. Heading. Selected. Selected. Focus 40 BTE8 D112 CB. Connecting.
You see, it's showing it's connected, and it was before. And I don't usually have problems with this one, but like I said, this one is one that my coworker has been using. And now that I think about it, I think she said there was some kind of a problem, and I kind of thought she was not doing something she should have been doing, but but I don't think so. I think it's just not working right. Because it'll pair, and it'll stay paired technically, but then it drops off. Let's use this one. Let's turn this off. The only thing about this one is it's got a sticky key, but I brought it to show the size. The size is important. The smaller devices are nice and portable, which is great.
Focus 14 BTE 86C 200 sub secure. Text field is at 0. Pair. Settings.
There, that works.
Display and
Okay.
brightness. Edit.
Oh, we're on a roll.
Headings. Containers.
There's a key stuck on here. Normally, I bring the one that's like this, that's in our office, to a demo, but we had...
More info.
There.
Focus 40 BTE 8 D112 CB. Not connected.
We had a
Button.
consumer
Control center.
who-
Settings. Music. Search field. Quick nav off. Item choose.
Who
Closing
brought-
item chooser.
who brought his Focus 14 in one day that he got through I Can Connect, and it wasn't working. It had a sticky key, and so I gave him one of ours as a loaner, and now I've got the one with the sticky key, so it's making commands that I didn't tell it to. But, so, everything goes good on the presentation except the technology part, right? But anyway, there's a lot built in, and if you want to come up and talk, I'd be glad to talk after when we get the chance. I know I'm running over already. Any last questions? One more thing, give me one more chance on technology.
Danny?
Yeah.
So I know you didn't, not able to show it, but every time it speaks, it comes up, right? Is that-
Yes,
it's just-
everything is the same. What you see, what you can read is what it verbalizes. So it's giving information. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because it's giving information that's not necessarily spelled out on the screen. Like sometimes when you see a box around something, or like the little 3 dots, it won't say 3 dots. It'll say more. And I, oh, okay, so that's a little extra info that I didn't have. There are programs built into Windows and into Mac that work well for magnifying and for speaking what's on the screen. The ones on the Mac are built in, and they have the same names as the stuff on the iPad, but they're not nearly as easy to learn, in my opinion. But the ones on Windows, not as good as some of the other ones that you can purchase. So this is Zoom Text, and it can magnify quite a bit. And we're getting into this point, we're suggesting Braille. And you can also change the color scheme, change what the arrow looks like, because people are losing their pointers all the time. We're encouraging them to learn shortcut keys so they don't need to find the pointer, but until they do, we can raise it up. And that kind of software is available through ICANN Connect if it's warranted. Anything else?
Hey, Danny? No?
Just to get an idea, how many blind consumers that you have no Braille that you've worked with in the last like years?
Haven't done that kind of a census.
That's super rare.
It's not super rare, but there has been this philosophy that we're just sort of getting over, that audio is good enough, or, you know, Braille isn't needed, Braille is outdated. And now with the electronic Braille being so much easier, it's easier to read than, I had a consumer who said, I'm never reading paper Braille again. Yeah, he wouldn't read paper Braille if you give it, nope, email me. Yeah, it's easier to read just tactily. It doesn't get smushed like books do. It doesn't take up a ton of room. So I think that's part of the reason, but part of the reason is also that a lot of teachers of blind and visually impaired students got together and said, this makes no sense. Give people different ways to do the same task. We do that with the adults. Why wouldn't we do that with the kids? But yeah, there's a whole middle-aged, well, not even, kind of millennial-ish age where they just didn't have it.
Yeah, I heard that it's like 90% weren't being taught, and essentially that's not, they're unable to read.
Right.
Essentially, they just
Right.
like somebody
And yeah,
illiterate.
it's amazing the percent, and I don't have this statistic either, but there's something about how many blind students read Braille, and it's this really small number, and how many blind people are unemployed, and it's this really big number, and how many of the employed blind people read Braille, and that's a very high number.
That is a good number to see.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up again. But, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Mason.
All that technology.
Screen locked.
You can
There we go. That's pretty loud, huh? The iPad?
Yeah, they go very loud, which is great.
Great. All right. All right, we are going to have a few minutes to fill out the evaluation forms, but first we wanted to discuss about how we can use the information that we received today to better provide services for the individuals of Wisconsin. So I know everybody wants to be the first step, right? ADRCs want to be the first step. ILCs want to be the first step. WESP, DHH, you heard, wants to be the first step. Our philosophy, and it's is no wrong door, and that's, I mean, it's our philosophy, but it's also a program that we're trying to develop. So if somebody were to go to WESP DHH and they had a deaf individual that was low vision, our hope is that they would refer to the Center for Deafblind Persons for that assessment piece for ICANN Connect and others. But does anybody have any ideas or thoughts about the information that was provided today and how it's going to change the way that you go about referring or even just doing your job?
I feel like I haven't had enough experience with the youth stuff, so just hearing anything having to do with
The youth, yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of, I understand why they do it, but the state is set up that it's birth to 3 to 21, and then 21 and over. But the benefit of ILCs is that you work with cradle to, cradle to beyond. So that's kind of interesting. So I think if we can coordinate that kind of stuff, like getting more of the youth traffic through the ILCs where necessary, where possible. Anybody else? Anything else? If you have any questions, I think everybody here would have my email, but if you don't, come up to me. I've got some business cards. We're just really trying to develop the network and make sure that everybody has the resources that they need where we can. And we're working to make this WISTech program work for you. That's our goal. So we really appreciate you attending this training. Having these numbers is really going to help us going forward in providing these trainings as well. We do have the Assistive Technology Council. If you are curious about that, please do let me know. Otherwise, I'd really appreciate it if you'd fill out those training evaluations. Any other final comments? All right, it's about 10 after 4. So if you could fill those out and provide those over here on this table right now, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.